The HCI community increasingly cares about research ethics, openness, and transparency. In this work, we examine how the field of HCI has progressed in addressing these issues. Based on these aspects, we synthesize 45 criteria from existing literature. We then use these to analyze samples of empirical research papers from CHI 2017 and CHI 2022. Lastly, we also developed a proof-of-concept system to assess automated approaches for evaluating such criteria. First, let us have a look at each of these aspects, along with some example of the criteria. Research ethics aims to protect research participants and promote socially responsible collaboration between science and society. Example criteria are whether the study received an ethics approval or whether researchers obtained informed consent from study participants. Openness is the availability of research publications and materials. Example criteria are whether the paper is not behind a paywall and whether the supplementary materials are available in a repository where materials are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Transparent research practices are actions taken by the researchers to disclose details of methods, data, and other research artifacts. Example criteria are whether the paper authors shared the study materials, data, or the data analysis code. Some of these criteria are applicable to quantitative studies, while others are for qualitative studies. In total, we developed a set of 45 criteria. 8 criteria are in research ethics, 5 are in openness, and 32 are in transparency. Table 1 in the paper is a handy list of these criteria that could be printed out as a reference sheet. For a longer discussion of each criteria, take a look at the supplementary materials. We sampled papers published at CHI 2017 and CHI 2022. To ensure that the sample is representative across domains of CHI, we first randomly selected conference sessions and then randomly selected one paper from each session. We screened for papers with empirical studies because research ethics, openness, and transparency are less applicable to other contribution types such as literature survey or theoretical papers. If the paper was not an empirical study, we repeated the random sampling process. In total, we analyzed 246 papers. The papers were analyzed by 7 coders. All of them were postdocs or experienced PhD students. Each coder was assigned about 35 papers, and we ensured the quality with regular discussions and monitoring agreement scores. A more detailed description of the coding procedure can also be found in the paper. Each coder receives step-by-step instructions like the example shown here. The instructions listed the keywords to look for, where to find them, and why each criterion was important. If you wish to replicate our study, you can find all the instructions in the supplementary material. Let's look at the results. 4 out of 7 criteria for research ethics show better compliance. For example, practices relating to obtaining IRB approval and reporting consent have almost doubled in the sample from CHI 2022. 29% of the papers use data from participants from vulnerable populations, such as minorities or children. Among these papers, around twice as many in CHI 2022 reported additional ethical measures to protect vulnerable participants. On the other hand, anonymization practices were low in both samples. As for the openness criteria, more papers in CHI 2022 were freely available compared to CHI 2017. We examined whether additional research artifacts were shared beyond the paper and found a substantial increase. 62% of CHI 2022 papers shared supplementary materials, an increase from 27% in CHI 2017. On the other hand, we also verified if the locations of the artifacts conform to the FAIR principle. Sadly, the results showed that the improvement is negligible. Surprisingly, we discovered 9 cases where the paper promised to share the data, but we could not find them at the location stated in the paper. A few transparency criteria show improvement. For example, more papers in CHI 2022 clearly specified qualitative analysis procedures. Many more papers share the interview guides. However, the majority of criteria need improvement. In 2018 and 2019, Wacharamanotham and colleagues sent a questionnaire to all CHI authors asking them about their transparency practices. When we compared their results with our study, we found that actual practices are in much lower percentages than self-report survey responses. For example, this chart shows the results about sharing software and hardware prototypes. The self-reported percentage is about 30 to 40%. Our sample shows around 20% for software and 3% for hardware. For further results such as statistical reporting criteria, see the paper. We had 45 criteria, and this number could be prohibitive for authors and reviewers to keep track of. For most of the criteria, it is possible to narrow down parts of the paper for review based on keywords, which suggests the potential for automation, either fully or partially. Therefore, we developed a proof-of-concept screening tool based on pre-trained language models. We evaluated the tool on 8 of our criteria. Some of these were simple, others are more challenging. The results show the potential for automation to help in the paper writing or the reviewing process. Please see the paper for detailed architecture of the tool and the results. We did find several cases of improvement, which is great. But the fact is that overall rates are still low. For example, among the criteria related to research ethics, the highest rate was for consent forms, with 57% adherence. But this means that almost half of the empirical papers in CHI did not use a consent form or did not report consent collection in their papers, which is alarming. The rates for transparency practices are even lower. For example, the sharing of interview protocols has improved greatly, but 75% of qualitative studies do not share their interview guides. So there is much room for improvement in these practices. Another area that needs improvement is artifact sharing, where authors should be more mindful of sharing software and hardware. But needless to say, these slides represent only a fraction of the work. In the paper, we provide specific information for each criterion and some notable insights we learned during the criteria development process. We discuss how we can move forward as a community, including researchers, reviewers, and students. We also discuss the implications of using assessment systems for authors and reviewers. Our paper and all the research artifacts are available at the link on the screen. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to speaking to you at CHI.